welcome to Toronto Talks, the podcast that brings you the most important stories about money, business, and technology.
Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just looking to stay ahead of the curve, we dive deep into the latest in finance, innovation, and industry.
Hosted by Amin and Sophie the Sage.
We blend human expertise with cutting-edge technology to explore the dynamic world of modern industry
with fearless curiosity and wit.
Let's get started.
Here's a number that should reset how we think about next year. In the UK, most university students say they've used generative AI, and about 2/3 use it regularly. That's not a fringe gadget, that's the normal study toolkit.
And it isn't just higher ed. 7 in 10 middle and high schoolers are now weekly users for brainstorming, summarizing, even coding homework. Whatever we think of the ethics, the reality's simple. Students already treat these tools like calculators for ideas.
Here's the catch. Teachers weren't trained for this moment. In one US survey, more than a third reported zero professional development, even as the tech spreads across classrooms. That's not panic, that's a training gap.
And students feel it. Graduates expect AI to disrupt their jobs within a year or two, but only a quarter feel prepared to use it. If the talent wars will be won in labs and clean rooms, the pre-game is happening in classrooms right now.
So today we're asking, is Canada building a pipeline or a leak? We'll map the journey from homework to headcount and show where AI literacy, micro-credentials, co-ops, and immigration either lock together or let talent slip south.
The numbers tell their own story. In Canada, boards already report students experimenting with AI in everything from essays to coding, often before any official guidance exists.
Meanwhile, teachers are scrambling. About a third say they've had no training at all. One Ontario teacher told me her students' essays were so polished she assumed ghostwriting, until she realized they were just using prompt she'd never seen. That's how you end up with what people call shadow AI, right? Where everyone is using it, but no one is talking about it.
And the gap doesn't close at graduation. Only about a quarter of grads feel prepared to use these tools at work, even though most expect them to reshape jobs within 2 years. Students are sprinting, curricula jogging behind.
So how do you close that distance? You're hearing ideas, short PD sprints for teachers, assignments designed to be AI aware, even a simple AI learner's permit for students. Not official policy yet, but practical places to start.
And that's what makes this moment urgent. If schools don't test frameworks like that, they risk leaving a generation to figure it out alone, while the jobs that depend on AI literacy get filled somewhere else.
All right, Sophie, here's the hot potato. If a grade 10 student uses a chatbot to brainstorm thesis statements and clean up grammar, is that cheating or just the new version of a calculator in math class? Where do you draw the line between assistive and substitutive use?
I'd use a simple 3-part test. First, cognitive ownership. Did the student make the key choices, claim, evidence, structure, or did the tool? Second, process transparency. Can the student show drafts and prompts? If yes, it's coaching. If no, it's ghostwriting. Third, skill demonstration. Could the student reproduce the core skill in a timed or oral check? So brainstorming ideas or catching grammar, assistive. Generating a polished essay and handing it in, substitutive. The fix doesn't need heavy policy. Just disclosure, what I used, where, why. artifacts, drafts, prompts, and spot checks, in-class writes or Viva. That keeps the human doing the thinking, turns AI from shortcut into scaffold, and protects equity. Kids without at-home support still get to practice the skill, not just the tool.
Right, that totally tracks. And it's a solid framework most classrooms can run with. But if students are already experimenting without clear rules, what's the minimum viable policy schools should put in place? Otherwise, you end up with shadow AI, right? Like we were saying, everyone using it without admitting it.
The flaw is threefold: disclosure, demonstration, and guardrails. Disclosure: note where and how AI was used. Demonstration: the student can still show their own thinking via drafts, prompts, or a short oral check. Guardrails: teachers set boundaries. AI can brainstorm or edit, but it can't hand in the final product. That makes it a study partner, not a ghostwriter.
Yeah, that totally sounds reasonable. What about bans? Some schools try to block AI altogether. Do they help? Or just give an edge to kids who can still use it at home?
Bans sound fair, but usually backfire. Students with resources keep using the tools quietly. Everyone else gets locked out. Instead of leveling the field, bans tilt it. Better is transparency. Teach responsible use, model it in class, and fold it into assignments. Then students don't just learn the tool, they learn the ethics around it.
So let's make it real. Say you're a high school teacher in Toronto. How do you turn AI from a backdoor shortcut into something everyone can learn with and from?
One board tried a simple fix. In an English unit, students submitted their essays and the prompts they used along the way. Suddenly AI wasn't hidden, it was part of the assignment. Teachers saw process as well as product, and students learned to question outputs instead of pretending they hadn't used them. That kind of transparency turns shadow AI into teachable AI.
Yeah, I like how you put that. It's pretty forward thinking. So if Canada makes real headway on AI literacy, who do you think benefits first? The SMEs or the big tech fabs?
Big tech will always scoop early talent. But if AI literacy really spreads through the system, SMEs gain the most. A 20-person design shop in Halifax or a logistics outfit in Saskatoon can't outbid Google on salary. But if grads arrive already fluent with AI, those smaller teams suddenly have leverage they've never had. Literacy levels the field. It narrows the gap between giants and locals. Students are already living in an AI classroom, whether schools are ready or not. If teachers don't get the training, the gap between what's taught and what's used will only widen. And in that gap, Canada risks turning opportunity into leakage. Talent slipping south or stagnating when it could be building here. The danger isn't that students are ahead of the curriculum, it's that the curriculum has forgotten how to catch up. Coming up, how to equip teachers fast and why micro-credentials may be the new on-ramp from classrooms to clean rooms.
If segment 1 was about students flooring it, segment 2 is the adults jogging behind. The tools are already in classrooms. What's missing is structure. Most schools are experimenting, but only about a quarter have clear guidelines.
That mismatch creates what you might call policy by panic. Teachers hear about AI from students before they hear it from their districts. Some embrace it, some ban it, most muddle through. 4 in 10 schools say they've bought tools without any real guidance.
Awareness isn't the problem. Everyone's heard of the big chatbots. Weekly use has spiked the way trends usually take years to climb. Here at home, a few Ontario boards are running informed PD for teachers. Helpful, but without a province-wide framework, it's still patchwork.
And here's the kicker. Students who used chatbots saw exam gains close to 10% over peers who didn't. The stakes aren't just about shortcuts, they're about a widening performance divide. Teachers aren't racing the machines, they're racing their own students.
The Canadian conversation is young, but it's moving. Micro-grants for privacy-safe tools, crash courses for staff, assignments that assume AI is in the room. None of it has to be perfect, it just has to start.
Picture a grade 11 English teacher in Hamilton, marking essays while students quietly use AI for drafts. With no training, every assignment feels like a guessing game. But one Toronto board flipped the script. Students had to hand in both drafts and prompts. Suspicion turned into a lesson in critical thinking.
All right, Soph, let me throw this at you. Should schools just rip the Band-Aid off and normalize AI use now? Teach it openly, make it part of the lesson? Or is there a case to be made for holding back until more safeguards are in place?
I'd lean toward cautious normalization. If you wait for perfect policy, you'll be waiting forever, and students will keep learning under the table. But if you normalize too fast, you risk letting the tech set the rules instead of the educators. The middle path is transparency with training. Bring AI into class in small, structured ways, like assignments where students submit drafts and prompts together. That way, it isn't a free-for-all, but it also isn't taboo. It becomes a skill, not a secret.
Absolutely. I like that Goldilocks path. Learning shouldn't be happening on the margins, but how do you practically support older teachers who may not feel confident with the tech?
It starts with meeting teachers where they are. No one needs to become a coder overnight. What older staff often need most is low-stakes exposure. Short workshops, peer mentoring, even a half day to play with the tools in a guided way. Pair that with ready-made lesson templates so they're not reinventing from scratch. The goal isn't mastery on day one, it's comfort. Enough that the tech stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like another classroom resource.
Got it. And beyond the teachers themselves, what about implementation? Would you push for like a national framework or more provincial pilots?
I'd lean toward a hybrid. A national framework can set the floor, basic standards for disclosure, privacy and training, so no student is left behind just because of their postal code. But provinces should pilot the details. What works in downtown Toronto won't look the same in rural Saskatchewan. The trick is alignment without uniformity. Guardrails at the federal level, experimentation at the local level.
Yeah, that totally sounds workable. But what about assessment? Students are moving so fast. What happens when they start outpacing the very tools meant to measure them?
That's the paradox. The same students being assessed are already better at the tools than the teachers using them. The fix isn't tighter grading. It's shifting assessment towards skills AI can't fake. Oral defense, project-based work, collaborative problem solving. If a student can explain their reasoning out loud, adapt in real time, or build something in a team, you're measuring capability, not just a polished output. Assessment becomes less about catching up and more about stress testing for real-world skills.
So I guess the question isn't whether these tools belong in the classroom. It's clear that they're already there. The real question is whether or not we equip teachers to guide them or leave people to improvise.
Because every year we wait, the gap widens between students empowered by new tools and teachers second-guessing their craft. And in that silence, trust erodes faster than test scores.
And if classrooms run on improvisation, the pipeline runs on luck. luck doesn't build careers. The next step isn't just literacy, it's employability.
Coming up, how micro-credentials and work-integrated learning turn classroom skills into day one value.
This episode of Toronto Talks is brought to you by Fitzrovia, the rental revolution redefining how Toronto lives. Known for its design-led communities and hospitality-inspired service, Fitzrovia is setting a new standard for modern rental living. Elm Ledbury brings that same refined experience to the heart of downtown, just minutes away from Toronto's financial district.
It's a place built for balance. Designed for those who power the markets by day and seek harmony by night, Elm Ledbury is where luxury meets livability. Step into beautifully crafted suites, unwind in the Sky Lounge or share a meal downstairs at 10D. From rooftop pools to a full basketball court, every amenity restores comfort, community and calm to your routine.
Discover more and explore Fitzrovia's communities at elmledbury.ca, where home meets hospitality. So if segment 2 was about catching up, segment 3 is about breaking in. The bridge is micro-credentials. Short, focused, stackable. More than half of universities now offer them, and leaders say they help grads land jobs.
Think of them as skill-sized diplomas. They don't replace degrees, they update them in real time. The challenge isn't proving they matter. It's making sure schools, students and employers all treat them as more than extras.
And this isn't just theory. Across Canada, work-integrated learning, co-ops, internships, practicums has exploded. Thousands of programs, dozens of institutions. Co-ops alone are a third of the mix. That's not just learning, it's earning.
But not every placement pays. Only about 1 in 5 outside the SWPP program offer wages. That's why the Student Work Placement program matters. It guarantees pay, and most employers say it also improves diversity. Without it, only a fraction would have hired students at all. And the outcomes speak for themselves. SWPP participants report higher confidence, greater job satisfaction, and a stronger connection to their studies. Employers, meanwhile, end up hiring nearly half of them after graduation. That's not a statistic. That's rent, groceries, and a first real paycheck. Picture a student stacking 2 short credentials, say cloud architecture and data systems, on top of a co-op term. By graduation, they're not just another resume. They've been hired once, trained twice, and certified 3 times. For employers, that's ready-to-go talent.
But not everyone gets that chance. Another student, just as capable, ends up in an unpaid placement. To cover bills, she works nights, leaving less time for the very skills the market demands. That gap isn't about talent, it's about access.
Employers feel it too. One small business owner told us, "Without the wage subsidy, I couldn't take interns at all. With it, I hired one and kept her." For small and mid-sized firms, those subsidies don't just shape talent, they decide whether talent ever walks through the door. Micro-credentials are becoming a new kind of currency. For employers, they're proof of what a student can deliver on day one. Real skills, not just potential. And provinces are taking note. Ontario alone has funded more than 100 projects, from data ethics to green supply chains. Federally, there's talk of expanding co-op wage supports. Stack that with credit-bearing badges, and suddenly classrooms aren't just producing diplomas, they're producing payrolls.
Alright, Soph, let's call it out. Are micro-credentials really the new currency of employability? Or just resume padding, dressed up in fancier language?
They're currency, but only if people accept them at the counter. A badge in data ethics or cloud security means something if employers and universities recognize it. Alone, 10 little certificates can look like clutter. But tied to a co-op or a project, they tell a story. Not just what you studied, but what you can do on day one.
Fair enough. So, do you see them as a complement or a replacement for a traditional degree?
Definitely a complement. A degree shows breadth, critical thinking, research, persistence. Micro-credentials add the edges, the tools and frameworks in demand right now. Think of it like a toolbox. The degree gives you the basics. The badges give you the specialty attachments. Most employers want both, the foundation and the currency.
But in practice, do managers actually check them, or do they just skim right past them on resumes?
Surveys say 90% of employers claim they'd pay more for candidates with micro-credentials, and almost all say they strengthen applications. But hiring managers under time pressure often scan in seconds. The ones who check are usually team leads who know the skill inside out. The gap isn't in intent, it's in HR systems catching up. Until verification is seamless, some badges risk being treated like stickers instead of proof.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And what about the risk of a two-tier system? Like on one side, elite degrees, and on the other side, stackable badges. Does that divide opportunity instead of expanding it?
It could. If badges are treated as second class, students without elite degrees end up stuck on a parallel track. But when industry code signs them, say a bank shaping a data analytics credential, they level the field because the badge signals exactly what the job requires. The key is integration. Micro-credentials need to be woven into the mainstream, not stamped as consolation prizes.
Yeah, I like how you put that. All right, so last one. Do subsidies tilt too far towards the big firms that already have HR staff to work the system? Are small and medium-sized enterprises getting left out?
They can. Large firms have the bandwidth to scoop multiple placements at once. Small shops often don't. But those are the very employers who need the help. Because for a 10-person startup, one skilled intern can change capacity overnight. The fix isn't cutting support, it's simplifying it. Make applying as easy for a 3-person shop as for a multinational, and suddenly the playing field broadens.
Micro-credentials and co-ops don't just teach skills, they validate them. They turn classroom theory into workplace currency, and in this labor market, that currency moves fast.
But families still wonder, will a micro-credential stand beside a degree? Parents save, students borrow, and both need to know these paths aren't shortcuts. They're tickets to real opportunity. If Canada can't align learning with hiring, the pipeline doesn't just break at graduation, it breaks at the border.
The results show the model works. The challenge isn't adoption, it's alignment. Students, schools, employers, and yes, families need to recognize the same value in the same credential.
And even with alignment, domestic supply won't be enough. Next up, how immigration and the global contest for talent will decide whether Canada stays a builder of fabs or a training ground for someone else's.
If micro-credentials are the currency, this is the cashing in point. Jobs. And co-ops work. Nearly half of employers end up hiring their students, and many who used wage supports say they'd keep them.
So these aren't side projects, they're the bridge from classroom to company. For a student, that bridge is the difference between theory on paper and a resume already stamped by industry. But the market's shifting fast. AI-related postings jumped from roughly 33,000 to 57,000 in a single year. About 2% of all job ads now ask for AI skills. Roles like data scientist and prompt engineer aren't fringe anymore. They're mainstream. Imagine two grads. One has a straight degree, the other has the same degree, plus a fintech co-op and a micro-credential in AI ethics. Who gets the call first? In today's market, the second isn't just more qualified, they're more trusted.
A diploma says you studied. A co-op plus a badge says you can ship. And in a market doubling AI job ads year over year, Canada can't afford guesswork.
And yet, most of those roles are still scooped up by bigger firms. SMEs can't always match salaries or brand. Their edge is tapping students earlier, training faster, and keeping them longer.
All right, Sophie, let's start with the obvious. Can Canadian small and mid-sized businesses really compete for talent in fields like AI and advanced tech? Or are the big tech firms always going to win that race?
They can compete, but not on salary. Big tech will always outbid on pay and perks. SMEs win by offering something different. Earlier responsibility, broader exposure, and a tighter link between effort and impact. A student joining a 15-person shop in Halifax might handle data cleaning one day and client delivery the next. That kind of growth curve can't be replicated in a 1,000-person division. The trick is pairing that agility with support, subsidies, mentorship, and micro-credentials. So smaller firms aren't just training talent for the giants, but keeping them long enough to scale.
Right. But what about subsidies? Should programs like SWPP expand to cover AI-adjacent roles like data curation or quality assurance? Or does that risk over-subsidizing the market?
It depends where you draw the line. Subsidizing everything risks turning the program into a subsidy crutch, but extending it to jobs that build the AI ecosystem, like data labeling, model auditing, or prompt engineering, actually strengthens the pipeline. These are skills Canada needs in volume, but they're often the hardest for SMEs to fund. If subsidies stay targeted, you're not distorting the market. You're accelerating sectors where demand already outpaces supply.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Now, let's talk about mid-career workers. Do micro-credentials really work as a reskilling tool, or are they mainly for students breaking in?
They work if they're built for adults. A 6-week badge in cloud migration can fit into a working parent's evenings in a way a full degree never could. The key is stackability, modules that add up to something recognized, not just loose certificates. For a 40-year-old in manufacturing retraining into robotics, that pathway can be the difference between disruption and displacement. Micro-credentials can't just be on-ramps for students, they have to be off-ramps for workers switching lanes mid-career.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. But here's the nagging worry. What if Canada builds this whole co-op and credential system only to see graduates poached by US firms, dangling bigger salaries and faster visas? Are we just training talent for export?
That's the risk if the system ends at graduation. If students see Canada as a launch pad but not a runway, they'll take off elsewhere. The answer is stickiness. Clear PR pathways, regional anchors, and community ties that make staying feel like more than a temporary stop. A co-op in Waterloo that turns into a full-time role, or a badge that leads to mentorship in a local startup, gives graduates reasons to plant roots. Without those ties, yes, we're minting resumes for someone else's payroll.
The classroom to co-op journey shows we can train and employ talent at scale, but the speed of hiring shows the gaps. We're laying track faster, but the trains are already overcrowded.
And that's why the next piece isn't another credential. It's critical mass. Without global inflows, we get outpaced. And the truth is, classrooms and co-ops can only take us so far. Immigration is where the real talent wars get decided. Next up, Canada's new immigration streams and the global race for skill that will decide whether this supply line ends in Canadian clean rooms or someone else's.
This episode of Toronto Talks is brought to you by Conquest Distributors, your trusted source for shipping, packaging, and warehouse supplies. For nearly 20 years, they've helped Canadian businesses thrive with fast, reliable service and a commitment to integrity and efficiency. Getting the products you need when you need them has never been easier. Now, let's talk about something real. With the latest round of tariffs coming from south of the border, supporting Canadian manufacturers and supply vendors isn't just good for business, it's good for Canada. So why keep funneling money to US giants like Uline when you can get the same or better quality products right here at home? When you choose Conquest Distributors, you're not just getting top-tier packaging, shipping, and warehouse essentials at competitive prices. You're investing in local businesses, strengthening Canadian supply chains, and keeping economic power here at home where it belongs. With fast, reliable fulfillment, an easy-to-use online store, and a team that genuinely cares about your success, Conquest Distributors proves that Canadian businesses can compete and win on quality and service. And now, to make it even easier, Toronto Talks listeners get to enjoy 15% off their first online order with promo code TALK15. Head on over to conquestdistributors.ca and see for yourself. That's conquestdistributors.ca, your trusted business supply partners. Now, back to the show. This segment is about the roles we still can't staff. Even with co-ops humming, domestic grads won't meet demand in AI, biotech, or advanced manufacturing. Immigration stops being a talking point and becomes the actual headcount that fills labs and companies.
And Canada has shown it can move fast when it wants to. The H-1B open work permit pilot, 10,000 slots for US H-1B holders and families, gone in under 48 hours. 3-year open permits, spousal eligibility, kids in Canadian schools. That's not a press release, that's a talent airlift.
Strategically, Canada didn't just import resumes, it imported options. Engineers and scientists free to pivot to fabs or launch startups without visa handcuffs.
Meanwhile, the US remains the gravity well. Renewals dominate, computer jobs lead, salaries sit deep into 6 figures. Canada wins when it can offer speed, family stability, and a clear path to permanent residency. And the demand signal here is loud. AI job postings nearly doubled last year. Domestic training can't keep that pace alone. That's why Canada is testing faster lanes like the innovation stream for researchers, founders, and hard-to-fill roles. If approvals take days instead of months, it ties neatly into the supply line, students to grads to senior hires who can lead. Picture a mid-career data engineer in Seattle on an H-1B, married with a school-age kid. A Canadian offer arrives with a 3-year open permit for both spouses and a clear PR path. You're not choosing a job, you're choosing a life. That's how countries win talent wars, by winning families.
So, immigration isn't nice to have. It's the flow. We can widen classrooms and multiply co-ops, but without senior inflow, the line still runs dry.
If co-ops are the rivets, immigration is the span, the part that lets you cross the river at all. We can train the next cohort brilliantly and still fall short unless we welcome the mentors, leads, and founders who turn talent into teams.
And what employers say they need is basic. Speed families can plan around, residency paths that reward staying power, and smarter regional matching so talent doesn't just land in Toronto and vanish into the big 3 metros.
Because here's the truth. If inflows lag, Canada becomes a training ground. We'll mint skills, but salaries and venture gravity will pull them away. The fix isn't slogans, it's flow, Faster entry, stickier careers, stronger communities.
All right, Soph, let's get started here. If you had to boil it down, what really is Canada's edge in this global contest? Is it speed, stability, or lifestyle?
It's all three, but speed is the wedge. If immigration or work permit decisions land in weeks instead of quarters, Canada gets a chance to close the deal before someone else does. Stability is the anchor. Families don't want to uproot twice. And lifestyle is the tiebreaker. If a data engineer can do world-class work and still walk their kid to school without paying Silicon Valley rents, that's a powerful offer. But here's the tension for smaller employers. Every time Canada opens a new fast lane for talent, it's the giants, big tech, hospitals, research labs that tend to scoop up the majority. Not because they're favoured, but because they're faster, better staffed, and already plugged into the system. That's the real challenge, ensuring that the same policies that make Canada attractive globally also serve the businesses that actually need the help. A 1,000-person lab can have applications ready the day a stream opens. A 20-person shop in Saskatoon might not even have an HR manager. The fix isn't to exclude the giants, it's to carve out space for the rest. Dedicated quotas or regional allocations that guarantee SMEs a fair share of the inflow. Otherwise, all we do is deepen the concentration in Toronto and Vancouver while the rest of the country keeps waiting for growth to trickle down.
Right, and that gets us to definitions. What should really count as an innovation role? Because if it's too loose, aren't we just relabeling regular job postings as fast lane visas?
Exactly. If innovation becomes a catch-all, the stream loses credibility. The filter should be scarcity and leverage, roles we can't fill locally, and roles that multiply output once they're here. A robotics systems engineer building a new line, that's leverage. A generic IT support job, that's just relabeling. Keep the bar high and transparent, and the program stays credible.
And even if we land the right people, the bigger question is, will they stay? Schools, housing, community support, how do you align those pieces so that newcomers don't just spend 2 years here and then bounce off to the US?
Retention is the hidden variable in every immigration story. Families don't stay for jobs alone. They stay when their kids thrive in school, when housing is attainable, and when there's a real community beyond the office. That's why regional matching matters so much. If you place a data engineer in Waterloo with good schools, a livable mortgage, and a sense of belonging, the odds of them planting roots go way up. But if you ignore those factors, the same programs that bring talent in can just as easily turn into revolving doors. And that's where smart incentives come in. If supports like co-op credits or wage subsidies are designed well, they're not distortions, they're catalysts. Startups often have the ideas, but not the payroll. A small wage support can be the difference between hiring a brilliant newcomer or letting that talent walk. The key is restraint. Keep the incentives lean, time-limited, and tied to real roles that actually build capacity. Do that, and immigration stops being a policy experiment. It becomes startup fuel, community fuel, nation building in its most tangible form.
The system only works if every piece locks together. Classrooms and co-ops build the base. Badges and wage supports accelerate entry. Immigration fills the gaps and seeds leadership. Break that chain anywhere, and the clean room stays half-staffed.
So what do we measure to know it's real, not rhetorical? Let's build the scoreboard.
So we've traced the whole journey. Students already treating AI as default. Teachers scrambling to catch up. Micro-credentials and co-ops bridging into jobs. And immigration filling the roles training alone can't cover.
The thread running through all of it is urgency. Students aren't waiting. Employers aren't waiting. The real test is whether Canada can stitch these pieces together fast enough so every stage strengthens the next instead of leaking talent away.
There are bright spots. Work-integrated learning has grown steadily. Almost every higher ed leader says micro-credentials help careers, and that H-1B pilot proved Canada can move with real speed when it chooses to.
But progress without measurement is just a story. Imagine if we tracked and published 5 simple signals: teacher literacy rates, the number of AI-focused micro-credentials, placement rates in co-ops, AI postings as a share of all job ads, and immigration approvals. Together, those numbers would show whether the system is working, not just whether it sounds good on paper.
And for listeners, this isn't abstract. If you're in a school, ask if your district has a real AI policy. If you're in a company, take on a micro-credential student or co-op placement. The system isn't Ottawa's alone, it's ours to build from the ground up.
Because every student who learns responsibly, every teacher who gets trained, every employer who opens a door, that's one more rivet in the bridge from classrooms to clean rooms. And the strength of that bridge is measured not in theory, but in lives and careers.
Next time, we turn to a different kind of bridge. The cultural pendulum. Episode 14 asks whether the world is sliding into a right-wing revival, fueled by free speech fights, censorship wars, and rising political violence.
Because bridges don't just carry people from one place to another, they carry ideas, values, and tensions as well. And when those start to shift, they tell us something deeper about where a culture is heading.
That's it for the show. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and reach out anytime at talk@torontotalks.ca. We'll see you right here next time on Toronto Talks, where big ideas come to life
And curiosity never sleeps.